Hi everyone, welcome back to Poetology. I'm Dan and this channel is all about writing and the creative process. I would like to talk about how to serialize your collage because so far on this channel I've always posted one-off collage I made and I often work in series of collages and not just a single one. And I want to tell you why this is beneficial. I want to give you a few indications as to how to do your own collage series yourself. And I'm also going to show you how I made one of the collage in that series so that you get an idea of how I think about it and some of the techniques I use that you can employ in your own work as well. The first reason why you should serialize your work is that it's easier to come up with one idea and then develop it than to come up with a new idea each time. It will also enable you to explore different facets of how this idea pans out, and you will also become better technically because you've repeated similar work a number of times before moving on to the next project, and so you master what you are doing a little better. There's a more material or financial reason as well, which is that you can use similar material several times when you're working on a series. You don't have to come up with brand new material each time, so the same books and magazines can be exploited a number of times. And one example of that on this channel is the series Ducks on Bikes that I worked on for fun in 2021. I used 2 books and 1 magazine for the whole series, repeating different iterations of the same idea until I basically run out. And if you're like me and you can be a little obsessive with your creative pursuits, it also makes sense to just stay within the space of a single idea for long enough for it to develop and for you to be fully satisfied with what you had in mind. Once you start, it's easier to keep going. You enter the flow. You don't need to think about it as much anymore, and you can just dive deep into it and let yourself be taken over by the creative process and forget what you're doing for a while. And then you don't have to reinvent yourself every day. You can just pick up the project where you left it and push it further. There's also a market reason to do this, which is that when you send your work out to magazines, they often ask you to send 3 or 6 art pieces. They usually want you to send multiple examples of your work, and while in some cases it may be wiser to send in different types of work in case they don't like one but will take the others, in other cases the magazine in question or the online publication or whatever it is has a very sharp focus on one theme. So having different presentations of that same theme, different ways in which you have worked with it, can be a good strategy for those particular publications to have a better chance of being picked up. So let's talk about my own project a little bit. Recently I've been thinking about video games and disability together. I think, generally speaking, it's not rare for disabled people to be into video games, partly because video games are a really good way to spend a lot of time in an immersive experience, but they also enable you to do things that you are no longer able to do in everyday life, such as running around in a wild landscape, jumping, doing physical stuff, and they also enable you to socialize, either within the bonds of the game or by playing in multiplayer mode with some friends. There's just a certain freedom about spending a lot of time in that imaginative world. So I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm writing poetry about it, but I'm also exploring it through collage. And so recently I've worked on this series of 6 collage, which I can't all show you because I like to keep some privacy around the projects that I'm currently working on. It's easier to talk about them in retrospect, but I also want to be sure that I can publish them when the time comes, which is not possible if I've put them on social media too much. So I hope you'll understand why I'm only showing you one collage, but what I'm doing here applies to the rest of the series, and if you stick around long enough and they get published, then you will get to see the others as well in a future video. That's your cue to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. I will be posting more about collage and other creative pursuits on this channel. For this project, I use a mat a ruler, a hobby knife, and a simple glue stick. There's also a bit of scotch tape at the end. I do like to work on the floor, but desks are a solid option if that's your thing. First of all, what I'm using for a background is from an old book called Times Gone By, which my housemate and I really like using for collage because it's black and white and it's got these scenes from the past that can be used in lots of hilarious ways. But personally, I really like these simple interior backgrounds, and I like that I can use an indoor space that, due to being black and white, will stay firmly in the background while everything I put on top of it in color will really pop out. My second source for that was Nintendo magazines. I got a lot of old Nintendo magazines from a vintage game shop, and I'm using them extensively for collage. There are two magazines I've recently purchased that I haven't used yet, but I think as I develop these other series on gaming and disability, these magazines are what I'll be focusing on. This guide about retro hardware and a Japanese fashion magazine. I have a soft spot for them. Now, first of all, I'm just flicking through the magazine looking for potential material that I can use on the page. There are a few areas that I will need to cover, especially the woman in the background who will need to be concealed by my collage. There is a man and a woman in the background. So at first I'm just looking for different things I might use. I then settled on this man I had pre-selected from a fashion magazine. I'm putting him in this reclining position because that is how I personally experience chronic illness and disability for the most part, is this need for horizontality a majority of the time. So here he is, stretched awkwardly between two chairs. And then I start trying to arrange other objects around him to see what will pop out. The main progress I made was when I found this TV screen that I put on the mantelpiece here, because that seemed to work really well with the arrangement of the room that I had, and it just fills up the space really nicely. I ended up trying different things with several screens and a video game box, but then I found this steering wheel, this Nintendo steering wheel that I thought fit really well in his hand, especially in the position he's in, and I thought, okay, this is gonna work. I then found a person, I'm not sure which game this is from, I've never played it, this character who stands at the back and is just covering the man in the background really well, and went on looking for other options to cover up the rest of the space, and especially the woman. In the end, I found this Donkey Kong character who fit really well where the man was, and I moved that character that covered the man to where the woman was. I was happy with it, so I started pasting. Once it's finished and I'm happy with it, I just turned the project over to put scotch tape where the page divides, just to reinforce it, and then I cut out the frame. I don't do it at the beginning because I want to have some flexibility in case some of the elements I add to the collage end up jutting out of that frame and going into the margin. Then I keep the decision for the last part. I can decide how much to cut off and how much to leave in. And that is the finished collage, which I was pretty pleased with overall. It added the last piece to my 6-piece collage collection, and it shows this man in that reclining position, but he's also holding a steering wheel, which can be symbolic, right? You're not passive or incapacitated, but you actually have the potential to move within the world and to act on objects around you. and the characters in the room make it really come to life. It doesn't feel like the video game is just an external thing happening on the screen, but that its characters start to populate your inner world. So that's it for the collage. I would love to know what series you are working on and what kind of collage video you would like to see from this channel, and other types of videos as well. Thanks so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video very soon. Bye!